Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest episode of Tales from Outer Space, taken from the subreddit HFY. The links to all the stories will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. And if you do, please consider subscribing. Story number 1, Alone, written by Historical Chicken. Two possibilities exist. Either we're alone in the universe, or we're not. Both are equally terrifying. Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke was a brilliant man, an inventor, a writer, a futurist, and the list goes on. Though, as brilliant as he was, he couldn't have guessed the truth of the galaxy. The thought that man was alone terrified him, as did the thought that we weren't. But what should have terrified him? The fact that we're alone now, and that we haven't always been. There was a time, millennia ago, when space wasn't so hostile. A time when life flourished on many planets in the systems. Explorers and researchers filled the void between the stars on journeys throughout the known galaxy. Until the inevitable march of time crumbled their empires, rusted their ships, and ravaged their people. A galaxy, once teeming with life on a pursuit of understanding, silenced by some unknown force. Humans are alone, as they've always been. We felt alone, at home, on our own world, always reaching out, never to be acknowledged. When finally we broke through the chains that bound us to Earth, we found a devastating truth. That alone was all we were destined to be. A terrifying, soul-crushing truth of the galaxy isn't that we're surrounded by hostile forces. It isn't that we're alone. It's that we're so damn close. So close to a galaxy that would have welcomed us with open arms. So close to a galaxy of individuals to share ourselves with. So close to not being alone. But we are. We're alone. In a galaxy filled with the remains of the past. We can see every planet, travel to every star, dock with every derelict ship between them, but we'll never know their crew. We'll never know them face to face. We'll never get to know them. We can see the scars of battle and empathize with the horrors of war, but we'll never know why they fought. And that's the damnedest part. We want to know. We want to know we're not alone. We want to know that the way we fight is like them, that they had struggles like we did. We want to know that we're normal, that we're not a miracle or accident, that we're alone of the two is much more terrifying outcome. We could handle others, we could negotiate or make plans for war, but what do we do with the loneliness? What can be done with the realization that there is nobody else out there? At least, not anymore. I don't know. I don't know what lies ahead of us. I don't know what we'll do with this fact. Maybe nothing. Or maybe we'll get sick of being alone. Maybe someday we'll leave this galaxy like they did. Then loneliness can be left to itself. End of story number 1. Story number 2. Alone for now. Written by Historical Chicken. When we first reached out into the stars, it was with an outstretched hand, waiting to find another to shake. It was unfortunate that we'd put it back, having never felt the embrace of another. Millennia ago, the galaxy wasn't so empty. You were just as likely to look upon the twinkling of a 50-year drive as you were the stars. But in time, far too little time, the galaxy had grown cold. Remnant bits and pieces of civilization left behind, as if the entirety of space was their graveyard. A tragedy or a warning. Our loneliness was bitter. We had struggled our entire existence to answer the question of our place in the universe, but we didn't like the answer. We didn't like being what was left over. But we marched on. We advanced further and further, until we could do almost anything. Almost. We still couldn't escape the loneliness. But we tried. We did dock with the ship, studied the planets filled with ancient cities, and even saw images of those who came before us. It filled the void, if only slightly, gave us a comfort that fact that though we were alone now, it may not have always been that way. And then it clicked. These ships, these cities, these people, they were alone too. Each one of them, one after another, burst onto the galactic stage, yearning to see the faces of their brethren from other worlds. They hoped, they waited, they died, never having known another. Each one of these peoples, they felt the same loneliness. They may have even discovered the same facts that we had about the true nature of life in the galaxy. It wasn't rare, it was slow, but they couldn't overcome it. Each civilization snuffed out before another could emerge, and now it was our turn. Now we would face the great filter, loneliness. But we would not be like them. We wouldn't simply fade into the dark. We would not sit around and wait for our existence to come to a quiet end. We built an armada of ships, trained generations of diplomats, did our best to protect every planet. We did not hide ourselves away. We shone brightly in the night sky. We screamed, "We are here." And we waited for a response that we knew, deep down, may not be around to hear. End of story number 2. Story number 3. The Cost of Staying Behind, written by Angry Viola. To my dearest daughter, I am writing this letter to you for 2 reasons. First, I must tell you that this is goodbye. I'll be staying with the Terran forces and will not be evacuating with you. I've spent a long time thinking this over, and I am old and my feathers are faded, but my mind is still sharp. We both know that I am coming to an end of my life, and I would rather meet my end here than anywhere else in the galaxy. Second, I want you to understand why I'm doing this. I will not ask you to agree with my decision or to forgive me for making it, but the circumstances of my life are reaching a climax, and I find myself with no other choice. I will not berate you with excuses, but the least I owe you is an explanation. I was born on Setection in a small village outside of the capital. I never knew my mother. She died just after I was born, but my father was well-respected in our village, and we lived comfortably. I remember when the first Terrans settled at the edge of our village. They were not treated well back then, especially in the early periods of the Terran Galactic Union. That was before the war, when we could afford the luxury of looking down on others. As the cycles passed, we got used to seeing them every now and then in town. They were good for fixing machines or fending off things that crawled out of the forest, and for various other tasks that my people looked down on. This is to say, things they could not and were too scared to do. In a few cycles, they lived alongside us. They asserted themselves as caring but strong, and my people begrudgingly respected them. My father, while not the most powerful Abbey in the village, worked closely with the Terrans and advocated for them in the petty village disputes and other unjustified means of discriminating against them. One of my fondest memories from that time was dining with a family of Terrans that my father had worked with. They insisted that we be served by them like we were nobles from the capital. They completely lacked feathers and talons and didn't have any sort of beak or bill. It almost was funny how strange they seemed to me at the time. How young I was then. At one point in the evening, the Terrans expressed concern over how the Xertian Empire became increasingly more and more hostile towards the neighboring states. My father eased their concerns, insisting that if the Xers declared war, we were a part of the Great Confederacy, a confederacy that would protect us. Why would we even be a target? We were just a small village on a small planet. There was no reason for us to worry. How cruel the irony of the universe is. We were completely blindsided by the Xertian War of Extermination. The Great Confederacy that my father had praised fell apart almost immediately. Evans had considered the Predators only on paper. We couldn't match the sheer force and extremely predatory and militaristic race like the Xers. During the evacuation, my father and I stumbled through smoke towards the Terran part of the village. He grew worried when none of them reached the evac point, and, not wanting to leave on my own since I was still a fledgling, took me with him to the Terran side of town. As we approached the group, my father called out to them, "The evacuation is already underway. If we hurry, we can make it to the next onslaught of shuttles." He always spoke in short, matter-of-fact way, but despite his call, only the Terrans moved forward to meet us. He was holding a revolver. Terrans were infamous for the kinetic weapons, and I had never seen one in the person before. There were 20 or so of them gathered at the edge of the village. All of them were armed. Some had small firearms of some kind or another, but most held small daggers, blunt objects, and whatever else they could get their hands on. "Friend." The Terrans lacked the ability to pronounce Avon names, and usually referred to Abby formally as Mr. or Miss. Friend was a title exclusively held by my father. "We're going to hold off the Xerxian forces for as long as we can. Take your son and get the hell out of here." This took my father back. He was known for never losing his composure, but when the Terran said this, his feathers visibly ruffled, and he practically screeched his next words, "You'll die! Please, come with us! Evacuate!" The Terran placed a hand on my father's shoulder. "Everyone here knows the cost of staying behind, but the Xerxian forces will be here any minute. If we don't do this, no one will make it off this goddamn rock." My father looked into the Terran's eyes, and they said nothing for a long time. Without looking down at me, he spoke. "Son, run to the evac point. Do not stop. Do not look back. I'll meet you there." "Dad, now!" His shout startled me, and I ran. I ran like a coward. A smoke stung my eyes and burned my lungs. I reached the evac point with my talons raw and my feathers caked with soot. And even when I escaped the planet, I didn't stop running. I spent the next many cycles of my life running, always just ahead of the Xers. I never saw my father again, but I didn't care. For so long I felt as though he abandoned me with those damned Terrans. The planet fell within a month, and within a cycle that was deemed uninhabitable. He died for nothing, and I hated him. During my travels, I spent time with nearly every major species in the galaxy, but it seemed no matter where I went, I always ended up on the Terran ship or a Terran crew. I hated them at first, the species that convinced my father to die like an owie. But the more time I spent with them, the more I came to understand them. I eventually understood that my father didn't die for nothing. He died for me. I grieved my father long after he died, and when I did, I was confronted by the Terrans. After my many cycles of traveling and living with the Terrans, I became a Terran outreach ambassador. Most species were trusting of the Avi than a Terran, and I laid the groundwork for many alliances needed to face the oncoming Xerxian threat. I was stationed with the Terran colony used as a resupply station for the war effort. There, despite the universe seemingly coming to an end around me, I fell in love with your mother. She was an extremely traditionalist Avi, and by then I acted more Terran than Avi. As the Terrans say, opposites attract. Within the next couple of cycles we had you, and another couple cycles later, your mother passed away. When your mother passed, I thought I was going to die as well. The only way I could function was to pour myself into my work, and in so doing, I unknowingly neglected you. I won't insult you by describing my shortcomings as a father, but all I want to give you are my deepest and most sincere regrets. Now, while I try to hold on to the ghost of your mother and the shattered remnants of our relationship, the Xerxians have come to finish what they started all those cycles ago. I know that you would expect me to go with you, but I cannot bring myself to run any more. You are not a fledgling. You're a beautiful and brilliant young Abby, and you will go far without me. I'm out of time. I hope you understand why I'm doing this, and that I love you. Love from this life and the next. Your father. End of story number 3. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please consider supporting the author from the link down below. Otherwise, if you wish to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so, like liking, subscribing, and possibly even becoming a patron. Otherwise, the easiest way would be to share. And until the next video, I hope that you all have a good one, and I'll see you then. Cheers.